Hello, thank you for being with me. I'm recording my synthesis for book 38 in my book week series, Hua Hu Ching by Lao Tzu. This edition is translated by Brian Walker. I am going to emphasize the focus topic that, from my viewpoint, is central to this book. I reflect on the possibility that I distinguish it as central to this book due to the fact that this focus topic is central to my work, and that is the idea of undiscriminating virtue, radical forgiveness, of understanding that all are connected, that we are all apertures of the same source of energy. This is something that can be from certain dimensions of our being, when all is great in our screen of circumstance, that can be incredibly enjoyable to open up to. When we consider circumstances that are not optimal, when we consider cruelty, the subject becomes something that can be a little more difficult to understand. And that's what I want to talk about today. Hua Hu Ching emphasizes undiscriminating virtue. I'm going to read right now the first quote from my vocal readings. This is on page 4. The first practice is the practice of undiscriminating virtue. Take care of those who are deserving. Also, and equally, take care of those who are not. When you extend your virtue in all directions without discriminating, your feet are firmly planted on the path that returns to the Tao. This book, you can note that this was on page 4. It begins with this emphasis, and it repeatedly returns to it. And this emphasis is something that I receive a lot of comments and questions about that are more charged than many of the other comments and questions that I receive. That charge typically indicates that there is something physiological happening in the individual sharing the question or comment, and it's something that I can feel, and I resonate deeply with that energy and with the question itself. How could we claim that we should help all, forgive all, feel connected to all? This is something that is sometimes very easy to understand when we're feeling a deep love and harmony with someone. It's quite clear that we're connected to them. When we're considering someone who has done something awful, something that many would characterize as unforgivable, it becomes incredibly difficult to imagine how we're connected at all. I feel something when I consider that in my physiology. I feel the disconnection. I feel the distinction between good and bad emit itself in my view. I feel that in that moment, my dimension of being that I'm working from is seeing duality with stark contrast between the different identities that I'm referencing. There's another dimension of my being that I've spent a lot of time and love cultivating, from which I see and I know how interconnected we are. This is the work that has brought me peace. This is the work that has brought me a sense of joy, a sense of calm, a capacity to return my pendulum to center, no matter the volatility of life's circumstances and the way that they may cast my pendulum to its extremes. If I were to be working from the dimension of my being that so clearly sees duality. And what I want to emphasize as I just begin to scratch the surface of this topic is that we can begin to see things from many different dimensions of our being at once. When we resonate with the dimension of our being that is pulled toward this darkness of duality, our connection to that at one-ment can disintegrate so quickly as our physiology constricts, restricts our peripheral vision. It even makes it feel difficult to breathe, difficult to think, as we see the urgency of protectiveness. And there is incredible value in that. When there is an instance of someone being perpetrated, someone being hurt, a group of people being perpetrated, a group of people being hurt, there is great value in distinguishing what is happening in that moment, in distinguishing an urgency and emitting that urgency from our physiology into a mode of activity. And that mode of activity that we choose to engage in may alter dramatically when and if we are able to connect with the dimension of our being that can register our interconnectedness, that can register a radical forgiveness, an intent to understand all, an intent to remember that we all originate from the same source, that any one of us could be any other one of us, given a shift in circumstances and a shift in heredity. I want to share a little bit of my story in order to expand on how I was able to maneuver to a place where my dimension of being that registered a duality such that I was able to protect my physical form, such that I was able to connect to the value in doing so, while connecting to the dimension of my being that radically forgives all. I have had things to forgive that I struggled with for many, many years, through much of my youth. I'm very fortunate to read so voraciously and to be so connected to wonder as reading so much and being so ambitiously interested and blown away by the mystery of what the human condition means was really what drove me to troubleshoot. And what I found ultimately over many, many years of troubleshooting was that forgiveness was required. And so figuring out how to forgive was something that I used meditation for and visualization for. And what was most remarkable in the transformation that was required in order to forgive, was a mode of inquiry. How could the individuals who I want to forgive have come to make the decisions that they made? And I abruptly found that sincerely adventuring in an imagining of what that answer might be was a task that required more courage than any of the tasks that had come before it. It was a task that really opened my doorways, because I did the work of answering that question in my imaginings. Of course, I don't know what the answers are, but I can imagine. And when I do, forgiveness is of itself so. What I find there is that what I'm imagining is a patterning of life circumstances in the individual that I was distinguishing as a perpetrator, and heredity that patterned into a human form that was maneuvering with its ecosystem in a way that from the dualistic dimension of my being, I can't understand. I don't even want to understand. But from the dimension of my being that sees our at-one-ment, I can connect to the courage to understand how that may come to be. It opens up my recollection of how many patternings of circumstances, cause and effect, and heredity may come to be at varying degrees on the scale. From the space of absolute peace, wherein there would be no temptation to negatively impact anyone else's life or surrounding ecosystem. A place of peace where the energy of that individual's life intent is opened to an inquiry about how to positively impact every other form's life circumstances, to a space where perpetration of any degree may be tempting at all. We read the first practice is the practice of undiscriminating virtue. So then we can ask ourselves, what does that mean? How would an undiscriminating virtue, or what I, Annie Titchener, am referencing as radical forgiveness, be emitted through our behavior, through our choices, as virtue, as virtuous? And then the work gets really interesting, because we ask ourselves what that means. How might we take care of those who are deserving, and also equally of those who are not deserving? Does taking care of people mean what we might have once thought it means? Maybe not. Does taking care of someone who we may reference as undeserving mean that we give them things, that we allow them not to have to engage in tasks that we have to engage in, to do things for them, to make things easy for them? No. What might it mean to take care of them? I'm not sure. I'm pretty clumsily troubleshooting around this area. But what I'm sure of is that we can't even begin to understand what that is until we're able to connect to a number of our different dimensions of being at once. Until we are able to expand into our recollection of our interconnectedness in and with the valuable physiological changes that happen in our system when we are impacted by events characterized by perpetration. I'm only scratching the surface of this subject. I will focus on it a great deal. I do know that applying this curriculum to the problem of evil is my life's work. I do know that my intention is to relieve as much suffering as I can. Without further ado, I'll move on toward today's readings. Enjoy. Book 38 in my Book a Week series, and the Brian Walker translated edition of the Unknown Teachings of Lao Tzu, Hua Hu Ching. Page 7. By connecting her mind with the subtle origin, she calms it. Once calmed, it naturally expands, and ultimately her mind becomes as vast and immeasurable as the night sky. Page 9. Those who wish to attain oneness must practice undiscriminating virtue. They must dissolve all ideas of duality, good and bad, beautiful and ugly, high and low. They will be obliged to abandon any mental bias born of cultural or religious belief. Indeed, they should hold their minds free of any thought which interferes with their understanding of the universe as a harmonious oneness. Page 13. The ego is a monkey catapulting through the jungle. Totally fascinated by the realm of the senses, it swings from one desire to the next, one conflict to the next, one self-centered idea to the next. And if you threaten it, it actually fears for its life. Let this monkey go. Let the senses go. Let desires go. Let conflicts go. Let ideas go. Let the fiction of life and death go. Just remain in the center watching. And then forget that you were there. Page 18. To the ordinary being, others often require tolerance. And to the highly evolved being, there's no such thing as tolerance because there's no such thing as other. She's given up all ideas of individuality and extended her goodwill without prejudice in every direction, never hating, never resisting, never contesting. She's simply always learning and being. Page 20. Do not go about worshiping deities and religious institutions as the source of the subtle truth. To do so is to place intermediaries between yourself and the divine, and to make of yourself a beggar who looks outside for a treasure that is hidden inside his own breast. Page 21. There's no one method for attaining realization of the Tao. To regard any method as the method is to create a duality, which can only delay your understanding of the subtle truth. The mature person perceives the fruitlessness of rigid, external methodologies. Remembering this, he keeps his attitude unstructured at all times, and thus is always free to pursue the integral way. Page 26. The Tao is always present and always available. When speech is exhausted and mind dissolved, it presents itself. When clarity and purity are cultivated, it reveals itself. When sincerity is unconditional, it unveils itself. If you're willing to be lived by it, you will see it everywhere, even in the most ordinary things. Page 29. Living with unconditional sincerity, eradicating all duality, celebrating the equality of things. Your every moment will be in truth. Page 31. Do not imagine that an integral being has the ambition of enlightening the unaware or raising worldly people to the divine realm. To her, there's no self and other, and hence no one to be raised, no heaven and hell, hence no destination. Therefore, her only concern is her own sincerity. Page 36. All misery is created by the activity of the mind. Can you let go of words and ideas, attitudes and expectations? If so, then the Tao will loom into view. Can you be still and look inside? If so, then you will see that the truth is always available, always responsive. Page 39. Worlds and particles, bodies and beings, time and space, all are transient expressions of the Tao. Unseeable, ungraspable, the Tao is beyond any attempt to analyze or categorize it. At the same time, its truth is everywhere you turn. If you can let go of it with your mind, surround it with your heart, it will live inside you forever. Page 42. It is entirely possible for you to achieve immortality and experience absolute joy and freedom forever. The practice of undiscriminating virtue is the means to this end. Page 47. All things are brought forth from the subtle realm into the manifest world by the mystical intercourse of yin and yang. The dynamic river yang pushes forward. The still valley yin is receptive, and through their integration, things come into existence. This is known as the Great Tai Chi. Page 50. When you perceive that an act done to another is done to yourself, you've understood the great truth. Page 54. Relinquish the notion that you are separated from the all-knowing mind of the universe. Then you can recover your original pure insight and see through all illusions. Knowing nothing, you will be aware of everything. Remember, because clarity and enlightenment are within your own nature, they are regained without moving an inch. I'm on page 56. This one must be read in its entirety. The Tao gives birth to one, and one gives birth to yin and yang. Yin and yang give birth to all things. Now, forget this. The complete whole is the complete whole. So also is any part the complete whole. Forget this too. Pain and happiness are simply conditions of the ego. Forget the ego. Time and space are changing and dissolving, not fixed and real. They can be thought of as accessories, but don't think of them. Supernatural beings without form extend their life force throughout the universe to support beings both formed and unformed. But never mind this. The supernatural is just a part of nature, like the natural. The subtle truth emphasizes neither and includes both. All truth is in Tai Chi. To cultivate the mind, body, or spirit, simply balance the polarities. If people understood this, world peace and universal harmony would naturally arise. But forget about understanding and harmonizing and making all things one. The universe is already a harmonious oneness. Just realize it. If you scramble about in search of inner peace, you will lose your inner peace. Page 61. As you return to the oneness, do not think of it or be in awe of it. This is just another way of separating from it. Simply merge into truth and allow it to surround you. Page 75. Greed for enlightenment and immortality is no different than greed for material wealth. It is self-centered and dualistic, and thus an obstacle to true attainment. Page 80. Simplify the personality. Refine the sexual energy upward. Integrate yin and yang in body, mind, and spirit. Practice non-impulsiveness. Make your conscience one with pure law, and you will uncover truth after truth and enter the exquisite upper realm. Page 81. Knowing that daybreak will come, you can rest peacefully at night. When you accurately perceive the fluidity of things, you also begin to perceive the constancy behind them, the creative, transformative, boundless, immutable Tao. To see this is the ultimate education and the ultimate solace. Page 96. Would you like to liberate yourself from the lower realms of life? Would you like to save the world from the degradation and destruction it seems destined for? Then step away from shallow mass movements and quietly go to work on your own self-awareness. If you want to awaken all of humanity, then awaken all of yourself. If you want to eliminate the suffering in the world, then eliminate all that is dark and negative in yourself. Truly, the greatest gift you have to give is that of your own self-transformation.